Budapest is one of the great capital cities of Europe and a must-visit location. In this guide, I will show you the 10 best things to see, including iconic architecture, amazing museums, and the most epic viewpoints. Right, let's go. The Hungarian Parliament building is one of the most famous and iconic buildings in the entire world. It's also incredibly popular and can only be visited as part of a guided tour. You will need to book many weeks in advance to get one of the limited tickets. Unfortunately for us, we didn't and ended up only being able to get a tour in Spanish, so don't make that mistake and book early. The Parliament building is enormous. It was inaugurated in 1896 as part of the 1000th anniversary of the country, although not actually opened until 1904 due to its sheer size. It's built in a neo-Gothic style and was inspired by the UK's Houses of Parliament as well as Vienna's City Hall. It is said to be the third largest Parliament building in the world, with an impressive 691 rooms and 19 kilometres of corridors. So, in summary, it's bloody epic. If you're lucky enough to get on a tour and go inside, you will be treated to some truly splendid interiors. These include the amazing grand staircase, which is intricately detailed and dazzling with gold leaf and polished marble. Next, you can enter the enormous dome to view the historic crown jewels as well as marvel at the interior of the huge dome. Cameras are not allowed in this part, so you'll just have to trust me that it is magnificent. The final impressive room is the Chamber of Peers, which consists of 453 seats and is decorated with murals showing historical scenes and coats of arms of Hungary's royal families. If you're not able to get a tour of the interior, it's still worth visiting the exterior of the building to marvel at its sheer size and architectural details. As it's situated on the banks of the mighty river Danube, you can also take a stroll along the promenade here to get views across to the historic Buda district on the other side. Here you can see a more sombre location, which is the shoes on the Danube bank. This is a memorial to the Jewish victims who were massacred during World War II by the fascist Arrow Cross militia. Victims were lined up on the riverbank and forced to remove their shoes before being shot so that their bodies would then fall into the river to be washed away. At some point during your trip, you should also cross over the river to see the building from the opposite side, where it looks even more epic, especially when illuminated in the evening. Location number 2 is the famous Buda Castle. For this, you will need to cross the Danube, and you should take your time and do this by crossing over the famous Széchenyi chain bridge, which was opened in 1849 and was the first permanent bridge connecting the two sides of Buda and Pest. It's a great spot for photos where you get nice views of both sides of the city. Once you've crossed the bridge, you can ride the Buda Castle funicular up to the top of the hill, or you can walk up. The funicular was first opened in 1870 and then destroyed in World War II before reopening again in 1986. It looks like a nice fun way to get to the top, but we skipped it as the queue was already quite long. Walking up only takes about 10 minutes and should be very easy for anyone with reasonable fitness. As you go up, take the left side paths that allow access to the bridges that cross over the funicular railway, where you can get some nice views. At the top is the mighty Buda Castle, which was the original site of castles and palaces for the Hungarian kings. It dates back to at least 1296, although the current Baroque palace you see today was built between 1749 and 1769. It was severely damaged in World War II, and the interiors were mostly rebuilt in a more modern style. When we visited in 2025, the entire top of the hill seemed to be undergoing massive reconstruction. So I assume if you visit in the far future there might be many more interesting buildings to see up here, but for now it's quite difficult to walk around due to all of the construction sites. The best thing about Buda Castle is the courtyard at the front. From here you get some of the best views over the city, in my opinion much better than those from the more famous Fisherman's Wharf, which I will show you later in this video. Even if you don't go inside any of the museums here, it's worth walking around and soaking in the expansive views across the city. Don't forget to take a snap of the statue of Prince Eugene of Savoy, who was a local hero and who looked badass astride his horse. There are two main museums in the castle that require 2 tickets, but both are worth visiting. Inside the main building, underneath the huge dome, is a Hungarian National Gallery. This was established in 1957 and contains a huge collection of mainly Hungarian art spanning all ages, as well as many works by other famous artists such as Monet and Toulouse-Lautrec. Here is a little montage to give you an idea what to expect. Don't forget to head to the top of the building where you can climb up inside the dome to access some balconies where you can get more epic views over the city. The other important museum inside the castle is the Buda Castle History Museum. Make sure you buy a combined ticket that also allows access to St. Stephen's Room. St. Stephen's Room is a small but incredibly ornate and lavish room that you shouldn't miss. This room is the first to be fully restored to its former glory and gives a glimpse of how the castle complex is going to be transformed in the coming years as it's gradually restored back to how it was before World War II. The rest of the Buda Castle History Museum is a fascinating collection of rooms and artifacts telling the history of Budapest. Inside you can access some very deep cellars as well as explore many historical rooms such as the pleasant vaulted chapel, so overall I think it's worth spending an hour or two in here. The next location is a short stroll from Buda Castle and is the very famous Fisherman's Bastions, aka everyone's favourite selfie and Instagram spot and the one place you need to go to be cool and hip. I found it to be a little overcrowded and it was difficult to find a spot to take in the impressive views, however it's a must-see place so I couldn't not include it. The origins of Fisherman's Bastion is connected to the medieval guild of fishermen who once maintained defences here. The current complex dates from 1895 and 1902 and was built as part of the celebrations to mark the 1000 years of Hungary. It has a fairy tale look with its 7 turreted towers, each of which represents the 7 Hungarian tribes who came together to help found Hungary. There is also a statue of St. Stephen I, the first Hungarian king. If you can squeeze through the many tourists, you can also get nice views across the city from here, and it's particularly famous as a good spot for sunsets, assuming you can find a space. Behind Fisherman's Wharf is one of Budapest's most famous churches, the Matthias Church, also known as the Church of Our Lady. The first church on this site dates back to about 1015, but the current Gothic-style building mostly dates from the 13th century. It has a long and interesting history, and over the years has been a coronation church and has even been a mosque for a few hundred years during the Turkish occupation. The building was extensively renovated in the 19th century to its current glorious state. You need to buy a ticket to go inside, but believe me it's worth it, as the interior is amazing. Almost every part of it is decorated with frescoes and patterns, creating a mesmerising interior that feels like the inside of a treasure chest. There's also a small museum to visit inside where you can access the upper galleries to look down into the splendid nave. The tower can also be visited separately, but we didn't have time for this, but have heard you can get great views from the top. All that famous and grand architecture has probably left you feeling a little peckish. Well, don't worry, as our next location is a good place to eat while also being a grand and impressive piece of architecture. The Central Market Hall, also known as the Great Market Hall, is the largest and oldest of Budapest's markets. It was opened in 1897 and is over 10,000 square metres, which is basically bonkers big. With its huge iron roof, it has the expansive feeling of a central railway station. It's free to enter and is closed on Sundays. Although a big tourist attraction, it's still used by locals to buy fresh produce. It's also a great place to try and buy paprika, which is an essential ingredient in most Hungarian cuisine. The upper section contains walkways and bridges to explore. Here you can buy traditional clothes as well as try typical Hungarian street food. It's a fun and fascinating place to explore and is also very busy, so it's recommended to come here early to avoid the crowds. Location number 5 is Gellért-hegy, which is another location to get great views of Budapest. From the Central Market Hall you should cross the historic Liberty Bridge, which is another masterpiece of iron construction and was opened, like nearly everything else in Budapest, in 1896. Budapest is very famous for its thermal waters and spas, so on the other side of the bridge you will see one of the more famous ones, the Gellért Thermal Bath. This was opened in 1918 and built in an Art Deco style. Once you've finished being impressed by the Gellért Thermal Bath, then it's time to head up the Gellért Hill to get some great views over the city. This large rocky hill is very big with many interesting features. One fascinating part is the Hill Cave Church, which can be entered for a small fee. This fascinating site contains a series of small caverns and passages and is very interesting to explore. We visited Gellért Hill in May on a nice warm sunny day. However, one big downside was the swarms of insects. Actually, these were more like floating clouds and were pretty horrific to walk through. However, once you pass through these and get toward the top of the hill, you will see lots of great views that make it very worthwhile inhaling a few thousand insects. At the very top is the historic citadel. This is currently closed for renovation, with plans to turn it into a major tourist attraction, and it's scheduled for completion sometime in 2026. So if you're watching this in the future, let me know what it is like in the comments. We visited a lot of museums while we were in Budapest, but our favourite was a Hungarian National Museum, which is a short stroll away from the Central Market Hall. This huge neoclassical building was opened in 1847. It has a monumental main facade with huge Corinthian columns that look very impressive. Overall, the building is awesome. And this continues inside, where you will be wowed by some grandiose interiors, including a huge ornamental staircase that is sumptuously decorated with frescoes, as well as the massive domed hall. The museum is very large and contains thousands of fascinating items from ancient to more recent. The main focus is on objects from Hungary's history. Some of the highlights include ancient Neolithic figurines. There are also many burial pits with Bronze Age skeletons you can look down on. There are quite a few other grave objects as well as many skulls, some of which are very unique, like this elongated skull. In the same section there are fascinating examples of ancient weapons and armour as well. One of the most interesting artifacts is this monomachus crown, which may or may not be a crown and is loosely dated to be from the 11th century. It consists of 7 golden plates depicting the Byzantine Emperor Constantine IX with other figures. It is incredibly elaborate and detailed. As well as the ancient, there are also rooms full of medieval armour, weapons, paintings and other objects. The rooms continue to gradually move toward more modern times, with exhibitions showing the wonderful clothes from various eras, such as these very elaborate uniforms. There is also a special room dedicated to Franz Liszt, who is probably the most famous Hungarian composer. The highlight being this piano that originally belonged to Beethoven before being acquired by Liszt. How cool to think that 2 of history's great musicians both played on this. The museum also has rooms dedicated to some of the more recent and darker chapters from the country's history, including the terrible treatment of Jewish people during World War II. In a separate section on the ground floor of the museum is the Uszoda treasure hoard, which consists of 14 silver objects from the late Roman Empire. There has been some dispute about the exact origins of these objects, with several countries laying claim, and after many legal disputes they were purchased by Hungary in 2017 and 2019. These silver objects are amazingly well preserved and very detailed. It's hard to believe they are well over 1,000 years old. Next up are a few famous places to relax, eat and drink. And as the ones I've chosen are all very near each other, you can easily combine them and do them all in the same afternoon. First up is the super famous New York Café, which some consider to be the most beautiful cafe in the world, and I don't disagree with that. You don't need to book, but you will likely need to queue up. However, this place is big, and when we went at about 11 AM on the weekday, we were inside and seated within 5 minutes. Although I noted, when going past later in the day, the queue was substantial, so if you want to go at meal times, then booking might be a good idea. Dating back to 1894, the interior is lavish, with almost every surface covered in gilding and playful frescoes. Sitting in here is a wonderful experience, and no one seems to mind if you walk around taking photos and gazing at all the exuberant details. Honestly, this place feels like the inside of some fancy palace. We had coffee and cakes, including this cheesecake, which was divine. Honestly, I could easily have scoffed another 2 or 3 of those, and it wouldn't have even touched the sides. It is very expensive but worth it. Also, service was a little slow, but that's actually a good thing, right? As it will allow you to enjoy the space for longer. A nice 10-minute walk away from New York Café is a Caravan Food Market, which is a small modern outdoor food market with many food stores to choose from. It also has free toilets in case you get caught short. It's relaxed and friendly and easy to use. It's a good place to try traditional Hungarian cuisine, such as the famous goulash soup, which is a delicious red coloured soup made with beef and vegetables and spiced with paprika. Very yummy. We came back a second time and also tried the Asian baos, which were amazing, as well as the American style smoked meat sandwiches, which were also great, although be warned they were dripping with juices and I made a right mess eating mine. Almost next door to the food market you will find the most famous example of a ruin bar. These are groups of bars inside abandoned buildings which are somewhat unique to Budapest. This one, which I'm going to mispronounce, so I'll put it on the screen as well, is called Kert and is very interesting to sit in here and have a few drinks and then explore the many graffitied rooms, courtyards and bars inside. We went in the afternoon when it was moderately busy, but I've heard they get very packed in the evenings. I think it's especially interesting to visit this place on the same day as a New York cafe to really feel the contrast between the two places. No top 10 city guide would be complete without visiting a cathedral, and luckily Budapest has a magnificent one in St. Stephen's Basilica. You need a ticket to go inside, which you can purchase from the ticket shop to the side of the building. I will put the name of the street on the screen as I don't want to embarrass myself trying to pronounce it. I recommend to get the combined ticket to visit both the church and the dome. Designed in neoclassical style, it was opened in 1906. It's a large, fascinating building with a massive dome and a stunning interior. It's named in honour of King Stephen, the first king of Hungary, and there is even a reliquary containing his hand. I've probably waffled enough about buildings in this video, so for this one I'm just going to show you instead. As I mentioned at the start, Budapest has a lot of amazing viewpoints, and I've already shown you the most famous ones. Our favourite one, however, is the Elizabeth Lookout, which is a small tower located a little way out of the city centre. You can reach it by hopping on bus 291, which departs from outside of Budapest Nyugati train and metro station. I'll put the name of the screen because I've probably mispronounced it. And then you ride it all the way to the final stop at Gellért-hegy. From there you can buy tickets and ride the chairlift up to the top of the hill. This is a short and wonderful ride where you get lovely views over the forest and city. We especially like this bit where you sort of go through a tree tunnel. At the top there are many hiking and biking trails as well as places to eat and drink. The lookout tower is a short hike uphill, simply follow the marked trail to get there. The tower was opened in 1911 and named after the ever famous Empress Elizabeth, better known as Sisi. There is currently a popular drama series about her on Netflix. The tower is free to enter, and from the top you get these amazing panoramic views over the surrounding hills and the city. It's really stunning and we wish we had a little more time to explore and do more hiking in this area. The final location in this top 10 is the City Park, which is probably one of the best parks in the world, as it's full of attractions such as the famous thermal baths, museums and castles, and could really use a separate guide all of its own. You can reach the park by riding Metro Line M1, which is also famous as the world's second oldest subway. We got off at Széchenyi Fürdő, which is right in the middle of the park. Just outside the subway is a super famous Széchenyi thermal baths, which you have probably seen in every other travel guide on Budapest. These were opened in 1913 and are inside a very interesting historical building. This is generally recommended as a must-do in Budapest, but I'm not keen on the idea, and I also didn't think it was appropriate to go in and start filming people in their bathing suits. We did, however, look around the impressive entrance with its lovely dome and interesting sculpture. Nearby there is a castle, the name of which I will put on the screen as it looks hard to pronounce. This was built for the 1896 millennial celebrations, so isn't as old as it looks. In the courtyard there are some interesting statues, including this one which appears to be some kind of death figure. Scary. You can go inside the main building, which houses the Museum of Hungarian Agriculture, which I think is well worth visiting as the building itself is very interesting. It was built specifically for exhibitions and has different wings and different architectural styles. These include a grand staircase and hall in Baroque style, as well as other rooms in Gothic style. These interesting and varied rooms contain a fascinating collection of artifacts, including historical tractors, all sorts of weapons, giant stuffed cows with big scary horns you definitely wouldn't want to be skewered on. There is even a large cellar showing the history of Hungarian winemaking. It's also possible to take a tour of one of the towers where you get lovely views over the park. There's also a lot of other stuff inside the park as well, such as a circus and a zoo, which we didn't have time to visit, so if you've been in them, let me know what they are like in the comments below. On the edge of the park you will find the iconic Heroes Square, which was also built for the millennial celebrations. It contains lots of statues, the most famous of which is the Archangel Gabriel, which is usually found on top of the big central column, but was for some unknown reason missing when we visited. Hopefully it will be back when you visit. The rest of the statues are still super impressive, showing stern-looking heroic figures from Hungarian history. Adjacent to Heroes Square is a Museum of Fine Arts, which is generally considered the best art gallery in Budapest. It is housed in another impressive neoclassical museum building. This one is also worth exploring for the architecture, as it contains some really epic interiors. The first one you enter is the impressive marble hall with huge neoclassical columns that will make you feel very small. Following this is the Renaissance Hall, which is another super big space which you can walk around on 2 levels. The coolest of the rooms was only partly open when we visited and is known as the Romanesque room, as it's built to mimic that style. There was some kind of event happening when we were there, so we were not able to look around it completely, but it did look very cool from the doorway. Opposite is the Baroque Hall, which is also epic and contains a lot of interesting paintings. Don't forget to go upstairs and look for the little balcony so you can get this nice view looking down into the room. The museum collections are also great, so even if you don't care about the architecture, you will likely find something to enjoy here. The basement contains a really big collection of ancient sculptures and artifacts, the most interesting ones being from ancient Egypt, where you can see tombs, mummies and all sorts of statues, trinkets and jewellery, and even some mummified crocodiles. I've been in a lot of historical museums, I've seen a lot of Egyptian mummies. I don't think I've ever seen mummified crocodiles before, so that's a first for me. There's also a great collection of objects from ancient Greece and Rome, including statues, tombs, weapons and a whole lot more. The ground floor and upper floors contain a vast collection of paintings from Europe, including Italian, Spanish and Dutch paintings. 2 of the most famous ones are these Renaissance-era masterpieces by Raphael, so make sure you don't miss them when looking around. Overall, the collection is vast and it's fascinating to simply explore the many rooms and look at whichever paintings catch your eye. For slightly more modern pieces, there is a small room next to the Baroque Hall that contains a number of prints by famous artists such as Picasso, Toulouse-Lautrec and Egon Schiele. Opposite the museum and on the other side of Heroes Square is another grand-looking neoclassical museum known as the Budapest Hall of Art, or Palace of Art, which is where you can find more extensive collection of modern and contemporary art if that's what you're into. So that is a top 10, but I wanted to sneak in one final honourable mention, which is the Dohány Street Synagogue. This impressive building was built between 1854 and 1859 in a Moorish revival style and is the largest synagogue in Europe. You can visit the massive temple interior as well as explore museums and memorials showing the history and location of the Jewish community in Budapest. Okay, that's really it now. Let me know in the comments what other cool things you think I should have included. Thank you for watching and cheerio!